Hey everybody, welcome to Online Soul Mermaids Book Club, and it is time again to share some insights and interesting tidbits and fun stuff and spiritual awareness things from my book Finding My Soul at Sea, which was published and launched last year, and so we are in the midst of I don't know what happened there. I'm in the midst of, this is week number 3, and so that means we're talking about part 1, chapter 3 tonight. And if you have not heard about the book before, Finding My Soul at Sea was created in 2 parts. And part 1 is all about the crazy, silly, interesting drama that happens behind the scenes of working on board a cruise ship. And part 2 is the spiritual transformation that happened while I was working on board, and how I started to teach meditation classes and personal development classes on board, and the spiritual journey that I went through when I was working in that crazy environment. So we're working through each of the chapters, and each week at 7 o'clock on a Monday, I am here, and you can join me for a conversation while I chat about what happens in each of the chapters. And as I say, we're up to week 3. Hey, Kim. And today's chapter 3 of part 1, is called Funny. And the reason, now there's lots of funny stories in the book, but this particular chapter I wanted to put in my favourite funny stories. And so I'm just going to talk you through a couple of those tonight, just for this little snippet of time that we have together. So if you've got a cup of tea, if you're in your jammies, that's okay. You can join us, because when you're online, you can wear whatever you like. I mean, I put on like my nice, top today, but for all you know, I could be wearing, happy pants and, with big smiley faces pajamas underneath. But that's just the mystery of watching me online. That's what happens when you're online. You below the waist, could just be in my underwear. Who knows? But anyway, I do have pants on. But anyway, as I say, Chapter 3 is all about the funny things, a couple of funny stories that happened while I was working on board, and the circumstances that I encountered that were weird. There is actually a chapter called Weird, but so this one is just the funny ones. So the first story is called You Can Be Sony Bono, which is all about the time that I had to dress up as Sony Bono, and my friend was dressed up as Cher, and that was a man. So he was dressed up as Cher and I was Sunny, and we had to sing on stage, which I don't mind the odd karaoke, but I have to say that was not one of my favourite experiences, but it was incredibly funny, particularly for people watching it. I didn't find it funny. But now in hindsight, looking back 15 years ago, I guess it would have been really funny for people to experience watching. The second story in this chapter is called Don't Sign Guests' Bottoms. Now, I would have thought that would be fairly obvious as a rule, but as we go along the story, you'll notice that some of the people in the story were slightly impaired in their judgment, including not just the person who signed the guest's bottom, but the guests as well. So that's an entertaining story. The next story is called The Shape of a Handprint, which is about a friend of mine who decided that he was going to put the shape of a handprint on my butt. And So that's an interesting story. And again, not fun at the time, but very funny in hindsight. And then the last story in that particular chapter, the funny chapter, is called Boys' Night Out with the Girls. And that is a story, one of my favourite stories of when my 3 girlfriends and I decided to go out with one of the male comedians in Cozumel, Mexico, to a strip club. And because all the other boys, all the other men were working that night for some reason. And so we decided that we would go to the strip club with him and play. It was very educational because I had never been to a strip club. And so I don't know if the other girls had or not. I know one of the girls was from Holland and she was very open-minded and had done lots of different things. But so she may have been to a strip club. But anyway, that was my first time. And we took our friend to that strip club, and it was quite an entertaining evening because we were trying to be boys, but really girls cannot be boys. We try sometimes, and we certainly did try on that night to join in, but it's very hard when you're interacting with the dancers and complimenting them on their dancing and having conversations with them about where they bought their outfits from, because that's not what men would be doing in a strip club. And so our friend was mortified that he was with us in the strip club, but we had a wonderful time and it was very entertaining, and he said that he was never going to do it again. But I think he probably uses it as part of his comedy routine sometimes, talking about the night that the girls went to the strip club with him. So that's a bit of a fun story to share. But going back to the Sony Bono story, when I was writing the book, I wanted to write stories that showed how I was expanding and growing, not just in a spiritual way, but in a physical way, in a emotional way, and just in all the different ways that you can possibly expand and grow, and particularly when you put yourself out of your comfort zone. So I think that the life experience that we have is the spiritual life experience that we have is all of those things. So sometimes we sort of separate those things out and we say, that spirituality is just one avenue. But I actually think that our whole life, that the mind, body, spirit, everything is actually spiritual. I think the whole lot are connected together. And so, I figured that I would share all of the elements of my experience of working on board as a crew member, because then you can get that sense of how I was growing and expanding in all those different ways through all the different stories. So on the one hand, it might not seem like a spiritual sort of story the whole way through, but the growth and expansion that happened to me was just massive in that time. And I worked on board for 6 years altogether. So some of the stories are from early in my career on board, and some of the stories are from later in my career on board, but they're all sort of mixed up together in the themes of the different chapters. So as I say, this chapter 3 of the book is all about a few funny stories. Then the next chapter is, called Weird, and then the next chapter is called Bad, and the next one's called Dramatic, and the next one's called Crazy. So yeah, there's quite a few different elements to it. But the funny story that I like to, that is probably my favourite, is the one about Sony Bono, because on the ship that I was on, the head office decided that we were going to do a show where we would have the guests and the crew singing and performing in sort of like a talent show type thing, but it was rehearsed. So we would pick, we'd have auditions, and we would pick the guests on board that were really good singers who had a certain, who seemed to sing like a particular artists. So we would audition people who would like to sing Madonna songs, and we would audition people who like to sing or who were good at singing Gloria Estefan, we would audition people who were good at singing like Elvis, and so we had certain key roles that we wanted to fill in the show, and then there were roles that the staff members would fill. And my manager, the cruise director of the entertainment department, decided that he wanted me and my fellow social host to be Sunny and Cher in this particular show. Now, I was not keen on that. I like to sing a bit of karaoke, and I had a bit of fun in that sort of space, but I wasn't one for getting up on stage and singing live, without the words on the screen, So I was not keen at all, but they thought it would be really funny because the guy who was my fellow social host was a very tall, long, skinny guy, and he did a really good Cher impression. So they figured that he would be great as Cher with the long hair and everything, and he also happened to be a great singer as well. And then they thought it would be funny for me as being Sunny because they had me kneeling down on my knees, and they put little half shoes on my knees, so it was like strapped around the back of my knee so that it looked like I was really, really short. And it was even more obvious because he was really, really tall and I was then on my knees, and I'm not a tall person anyway. So basically when we walked out on stage, the audience thought it was hilarious because there's this really tall guy dressed as a woman and a really short me dressed as a man. So anyway, the craziness of that would have, but I saw the videos later, and it was funny to watch in hindsight. But on stage, I was freaking out because I couldn't remember the words to the song, and so I had the words written on my hand, and then of course I got sweaty, and so all the words were all like getting all mixed up, and I couldn't actually remember the words to the song. And my fellow social host was fine. He just blah, 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 sang away. I got you, babe, and enjoyed the whole process immensely. But the other thing that happened to me was that my moustache, I had this like stick-on moustache that I had to wear, and it kept like gradually falling off. Every show it would do the same thing. I don't know what was going on with the sticky tape, but it would gradually sort of fall off every show and land on the ground, and we had to pick it up again and stick it back on, and of course the audience was just dying laughing because my moustache kept falling off. And after a while we started to make a bit of a joke of it, and my other social host, who was being Cher, would sometimes put the moustache on herself, and sometimes she would stick it back on me. And anyway, so it was one of those like crazy performances. And as I said in the book, there is video evidence of this craziness, but it's hidden away forever, and I have not watched it for a very long time. It's definitely not something that I care to watch because I was mortified because I thought that it was just a terrible experience. Everything went wrong, and I didn't enjoy it at all. But as I say, as a show, the audience thought it was amazing. They thought it was really fun, and it certainly pushed me out of my comfort zone to be singing live on stage. That was something that I avoided like you wouldn't believe in terms of my fears and things like that. So that was interesting to push that envelope and do that. And as I say, the craziness ensued. But the other story that I'd like to share tonight is the story called The Shape of a Handprint. And this is one of my very best friends on board. Decided that he would bring all of his friends into my cabin on this one particular night. So there was like 5 of us in the cabin, and it was just, they were all crazy, wanting to go out and dance, and I just wanted to read my book quietly in my room, and no, they wanted to play. And it was that moment in time, one of those moments where you realise that you're a lot older than the rest of the people in the room. And I was a lot older than a lot of the people in my department, in the entertainment department. A lot of the staff were sort of 18, 19, 20. You know, they were kind of in that younger age group, and I only started working on board when I was 27. So I actually was a fair bit older than most of the staff members on board. Some of the managers were older, but I was definitely in the minority in terms of my age when I first started on board. So it was nights like that where everybody was coming in and going, hey, let's go out, let's party, let's have a good time. And I was like, nah, let's not. And I'd have to convince them to leave me be. And this particular night, they really weren't having any of it. They really wanted me to go out and play. And so I was trying to shuffle them out of my room, and I gave one of them like a little tap on the butt to say, you know, get out of my room and leave me alone. And they thought, oh, so this is what we're doing. And so one of the guys did this whole like wound up the arm and did a big slap on my butt. And it was so loud. It was the loudest thing that I've ever heard. And really painful, like really, really painful at the time. And I was like, so mad with them. So I sent them on their way very quickly, and they were quite apologetic for, you know, the whole thing at the time, not thinking that it was going to be anything really bad. But the actual end result was a perfectly shaped handprint on my butt that turned into a bruise, which was amazing, really. Like, that was a crazy bruise. And so when I showed it to the group the next day at the beach, they were very apologetic, and particularly the person who had done it was very apologetic. But yes, that was the shape of a handprint story. So that was another one of my crazy stories. And yeah, but really put into perspective, that particular story put into perspective the fact that I did enjoy the fun. I did enjoy the fact that, you know, there was lots of people to play with all the time. There was always something going on, you know. If you didn't want to play, then there was always somebody else that you could go and spend time with. There was about 1,500 crew members, sometimes more, on the bigger ships at a time, and not everybody was working all at the same time. So there were times when there was lots of people who were available to relax, to go to the bar, to go dancing, to go and play games with, to have fun with. But not always people who wanted to play. So that was one of those experiences. One of the other stories that I'll tell you before I sign off today is the one about don't sign a guest's bottom. That is one of the really interesting stories. Is we decided on one of the cruise ships, that we would do a pub crawl game, I guess you could call it. Same as the pub crawls that happen on land, where everybody just moves from one pub to the next or one bar to the next, and you would do different little games and things, and they could win prizes and drink shots and that sort of thing, to just encourage people to have some fun. And it seemed like a really good idea at the beginning, but obviously the more that we did, the more bars we did, the more drunk the people got, and then it got a little bit crazy, and you had to manage a lot of drunk people who were trying to win a competition, which in hindsight probably wasn't the best idea, even though it increased the revenue for the bar. all the bars were quite happy with the plan, but then the social host had to manage a whole bunch of crazy people at the end, including some of the other social hosts and some of the other staff who decided to join in on our pub crawls. So we, this one particular pub crawl that this story is about was when it was my birthday. It was my birthday week, my birthday cruise, and on that cruise, on that particular cruise, we used to have to wear a birthday crown and birthday outfits and things like that. And everybody had to do birthday challenges and things like that. When it was your birthday, it was like a big deal on the ship. You got lots of attention. And one of the social hosts decided that he was going to give me, he was going to get the guests to give me shots, like buy me shots for my birthday in this one particular bar. So I ended up with 12 shots on the bar, which is crazy because I can't drink 12 shots on a good day, let alone after I've already been to a few bars. So I got my friend to help me drink the shots, but I still was not feeling very well when we got to the next bar. So I got sent home. When I say home, I got sent to my cabin by my manager because they were like, no, you're too drunk, or you're not really with it enough to keep managing the group. And I was like, fair enough. So I disappeared and went to my cabin. And later, the next day, I heard that one of the other social hosts had a guest come up to him and say, if he signs her, she gave him a pen and she said, sign my butt and, give me some extra points so that we can win the competition. And he had a few drinks, and so he was like, yeah, why not? Let's just do that. So he signed her bottom, but in the meantime, the husband of that person was actually not very impressed with that behaviour. And she ended up getting quite upset, and the husband got upset, and so the social host was suspended for that, which was a bit crazy. And as I say, I think the pub crawl idea was not the best idea that we could have had. But as I say, lots of fun and craziness always ensues when you're working on board. And as some of the people who are watching right now who've been on board will know and have experienced, the interaction between the guests and the crew it's a tenuous kind of a thing. You have to kind of be careful, when you're speaking to them, how much information you give them, and how much interaction you have with the guests. And so obviously that particular social host crossed the line, he got suspended. So interestingly though, he did actually come back on his next contract and was promoted to a team leader position. So I don't know what was happening there, but he obviously had some friends in high places who didn't mind that he signed people's bottoms in his spare time. But yes, so there is some crazy stories, and obviously, I really didn't want the book to have, just the crazy stories and the dramatic stories and the silly stories. I wanted to make sure that when you read the book, you actually got this experience of evolving with me through the process of working on board. And there was some really beautiful times. There was some romantic times. There was some, deep and meaningful times. There were some friendships that are so dear to me that grew out of that really close experience of living very closely with people, and I treasure those beautiful friendships now, and I did then. And so yes, although part one of the book is sharing all those silly, crazy, funny, wacky, stories, the second part of the book is sort of focused more on the spiritual side of things and how I started doing more spiritual things myself. The whole journey was a spiritual journey. The whole journey was an evolving of myself, learning to stand up on stage and sing, getting up there and actually hosting activities and being, putting myself out there and being more authentically me, and learning that I could actually be me on stage and be me off stage as well was a really important lesson. And I think that is something to take away for your life as well, and whatever's happening to you in your life is something that's, it's worth considering. How authentic are you being? Are you looking after yourself? Are you really fully sharing yourself in the most honest way? Are you being with integrity in your life? And that will certainly, you'll know if you're not, because I believe that we have a feeling in our bodies. I tend to have that sort of tightness in my chest or that feeling in my belly if I'm not being authentic, if I'm not being true to myself. And you might get a headache, or you might, feel like you get an ache in your body somewhere. I find that is the sort of thing that indicates that I'm not on my path, that I'm not being authentic. And there were lots of times where I had to check myself when I was working on board, where I had to go, is this the best thing that I could do? And sometimes I chose to push the envelope. Sometimes I chose to do the crazy thing just to see what would happen, because when you're not in your home environment, sometimes it's very freeing. There's a freedom there that is not there when you are living at home or near your family. Maybe you can be a little bit more, out there. It's the same sort of experience that I had when I was traveling overseas in lots of different countries. And those of you who've travelled before, even if you've never been on a cruise ship, you'll probably resonate with the themes that come up in the book about freedom, about trying new things, about expanding, about exploring the limits, your limits, about friendships that you develop when you're in close quarters with people. You can transpose those same concepts into a travel environment. You can, and even people, I worked on Dunk Island up in Queensland during my work career, after I came back to land, and I worked on Dunk Island, and those resort sort of spaces are very similar to the cruise ship environment. You've got that intimate, very close friendships that you make because you're working and you're living and you're playing and you're eating and you're sleeping, with all of those people. Not with all of those people. Well, I hope you're not sleeping with all of those people, but you have that concept of being with those people and in close quarters with them, and so you get to know them very well and you get to know yourself very well in that space. So as I say, today was all about chapter 3 of part 1 of my book, Finding My Soul at Sea. Da, 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 da. So if you have not had a chance to get a hold of the book yet and you're curious, I've inspired you. My website is pipcoleman.com/store, and you can get a hold of the book. You can also go onto amazon.com and order it online, or you could even, if you're in Australia, you can actually go to the library and get a copy from the library. And particularly now, if you are in anywhere in the world where you need something to read, something to do over the next month while we're in this space and time of social distancing, and you might even be in isolation at the moment. I hope you're all taking care of yourselves and taking care of your community, your family, and I look forward to hearing from you soon and talking to you next week. And if you'd like something fun to read, I'd love it if you would read my book. That would be amazing. So, Finding My Soul at Sea. I'm Pip Coleman. I look forward to seeing you very, very soon. And next week we'll be talking about Chapter 4 in the book. And Chapter 4 is all about weird. It's called Weird. So that's all the strange and wonderful things that happened on board as a crew member. So, lovely to see you. See you again soon. Take good care, and I will see you soon. Bye for now. Doesn't want to finish. I'm pressing the finish button.